Hello and welcome to the Emmy Awards. I'm your host, Emmy Cardinelli, and this is my podcast where I talk about what I've been watching or rewatching normally once a week. I've been transparently really struggling to be consistent on this podcast for the last few weeks, months ish, due to some issues in my personal life. I really care about the podcast. Like, it brings me so much joy and fulfillment. So I do care about it, and I am like really mad at myself when I don't end up getting it out. But I do unfortunately have to prioritize other things in my life over the podcast because the podcast is just a hobby. But I'm gonna spin that to be a positive. So if you've been like, damn, Emmy missed a week or something, that's kind. Thank you for caring. Thank you so much for tuning in general. If this is the first episode of my new Stumble Upon, I am a bit of a disaster on here, but I do have a full-time job and I do all of this by myself. All of this, it's like minimal, but I take my notes, I record, I edit, I do everything for the podcast by myself in my free time. I also have a full-time job, so I'm doing the best I can. If you're tuning in at all, thank you so much. It means a lot. Another reason that this episode kind of took me a bit longer to get out than I had anticipated was because, as the title suggests, this is about the Hacks season 5 finale. And I really didn't want to record an episode about the Hacks season 5 finale because I didn't want to admit that Hacks was over. Okay, I didn't want to. I'm also unsure about where I'm going to go from here. Like, I don't know what I'm going to cover next. So a lot of reasons contributed to this podcast episode being delayed, but I'm here now. Thank you so much for tuning in. Timestamps will be in the description. I don't really know if I'm going to talk about Hacks the entire time. I think I'll probably have some space to fill at the end. So I'll do some rapid fire thoughts on other shows I've been watching lately and then check in about what I want to cover going forward. If you have any shows that you want to hear my thoughts on, feel free to comment down below. I'm open to any suggestions. So anyways, Hacks season 5 episode 10 is called Hacks in parentheses finale. Very straightforward. We open with Ava on the set of her show. It's day 1 of Who's Making Dinner, which sometimes when I'm recapping, I'm like, do I need to explain something that I've already talked about in the last few episodes? But anyways, it's Ava's show that obviously she's using the title, and it's like a spin-off based off of her relationship with Deborah. Not really, because it's not like the exact plot of Hacks, but the core, so much of what Hacks is that relationship dynamic between Deborah and Ava. So like I think it's very smart to take that and obviously use it in a different genre, and also like it's still connected to Deborah because it's the spin-off about Who's Making Dinner. Like I think that's beautiful. I think that's beautiful. And I think, again, as I just said, a core of what makes Hacks so good is the dynamic between Ava and Deborah. And I think there's so much there when it comes to like different generations. And it's so funny because right now I'm watching Survivor Gen X versus Millennials, and even that like is so interesting, the way that they frame the different generations. Also watching it like years later, where like I'm the age of the Millennials now, but I'm Gen Z, and generations are just so interesting. And I think Deborah and Ava are such an interesting dynamic because they have two very different perspectives, but sometimes they reach the same conclusion just from different angles. And it's really, their dynamic is really fascinating and obviously very funny. So I understand why like that worked and why the network liked that idea more than like a bunch of young 20 somethings living in this house. I'm interested because I feel like we didn't get much information on how it connects to Who's Making Dinner, because the original idea that Ava had was that it's Who's Making Dinner, but it's like generations. They're living in the same house, but they have to like split, like 5 people have to live in the house to afford it. So it's like, so I'm interested to see, not interested to see, the show's over. I mean, and maybe other people I'm just interested in how that still connects to like Who's Making Dinner. Is it like Deborah's character from is now old. Like, is it supposed to be like Deborah aged and now she has a roommate who's that's the one piece I don't really understand, that is still called Who's Making Dinner, because I thought it wasn't going to be called that, but it's still called Who's Making Dinner, and the set is still like I'm interested. Is that just me? Am I stupid? Did they explain that and I missed it? Like, I don't know. I don't know. But anyways, it is really funny to me that I'm watching Survivor Gen X versus Millennials at the same time that I'm talking about the ending of Hacks and like the generations being so. They should do Gen Z versus Boomers or something, like Zoomers versus Boomers. Survivor needs to bring back the themes. Okay, sorry, let me move on. At the Diva casino hotel, anyways, at the Diva, Marcus surprises Deborah by showing her that the comedy club, which they had originally named the Kidden Heel Club, is going to be called the Deborah Vance Comedy Club. Marcus thought it just felt more right, and it's like sweet, and it's a very nice moment. It's a very nice moment. It's very heartfelt. And then the next thing we see is the grand opening at the Diva. Deborah gives a speech. She thanks Marcus. Marcus's mother is so proud. Deborah's daughter is so proud. Very, very beautiful. And Deborah goes on to say that a few months ago, a young pop star who was obsessed with her told her that she brought residencies to Vegas. Vegas needed her. And she's like, the reality is I needed Vegas. It's the one place that I could be whoever I wanted to be. And it embraced me when I needed it most. And it's truly my home. And it's very beautiful. It's very beautiful. So shout out to Chris Briney's character. I love the fact that he was in like one episode, but then he's made like mini cameos. Like in the garden episode, this episode he gets mentioned. Like shout out to Chris Briney. But it's beautiful. It's beautiful. And I really love the fact that I know I touched on it in previous podcast episodes, but I really love the fact that they had a storyline this season of Deborah and Marcus working together, because in a lot of ways this season was like tying in and a lot of like callbacks to like the first season and us being like where we were, like them being where they were but different in a really powerful way. There's another scene I'm thinking of in this episode that I'll get to with what I'm kind of mean by that, but I think the Marcus Deborah working relationship had many ups and downs throughout the series, because there were moments they couldn't work together because of exclusivity. Like they, so I think it was really beautiful for the final season to have another storyline of them working together, but it's like not going back to exactly what it was. And they're like more partners. And like, I just feel like that was very necessary to wrap up the story. Like, I think Hacks did a really good job of having like episode by episode mini storylines and beats and funny comedic bits, while also having important like loose ends that needed to be tied up, like wrapping everything up nicely. Deborah's relationship with her daughter kind of wrapped up in a really beautiful way. Obviously, the Ava-Deborah dynamic got explored and tied up in a really nice way. The Marcus-Deborah of it all also got explored and tied up. Like, I just think they did a really good job with things like that. And I think that's what makes Hacks so good, is like it's so funny, but it's also just so well executed. And like, I think sometimes comedy shows struggle with like consistent through lines, or like telling a consistent story, or like, I don't know, and not all comedy shows, but I just genuinely feel like Hacks did such a good job of like being funny and having like episode by episode bits, but like they all tied into like a bigger purpose. And I think also, sorry to go on another tangent, but I think something that I feel is often missing in TV these days, especially when I'm comparing to like shows from years prior where we had a lot of filler episodes, is you don't get these like unnecessary storylines, but that then tell you more about the characters. Because I feel like that's really how you get to know the characters in a lot of these old shows, is like not even the big plot lines. It's just like you get a more well-rounded three-dimensional version of these characters, because it's not just them in the most important moments. It's not just like the most important plot. You get like kind of pointless moments of how they are when there's not like the big central conflict going on. And I think Hacks does a really good job of having these silly moments and having these like minor storylines that are like not like they went on The Amazing Race, like that wasn't necessary to any particular thing, but it brought out so much about Deborah as a mom, about Deborah and her daughter's relationship. You know what I mean? Like I just feel like sometimes shows with 10 episodes, they just try, like every beat is like super important to the general story they're trying to tell, in a way that then you miss out character building. Either that or like I think shows have a hard time balancing both, where it's like it's either a bunch of silly, goofy, irrelevant storylines that you're like, okay, what is the point of this? It's not really adding much to the general story, or you don't have enough of that and you're like, okay, we got the main story and it was well executed, but like I don't really feel like I have a deep understanding of who these people are beyond this thing they went through. I don't know if I'm making sense. I just think Hacks does such a good job of like having filler storylines that have a purpose but also aren't not every single thing is super deep and see. I mean, it's a comedy show. I don't know. I'm not making sense. Jimmy in the Latitude offices is working in the mailroom, and he's like talking with some of the interns or like low-level employees. They're bummed that they can't go to the retreat, and he's talking about the retreat, and he's like, it kind of sucks. Like, you know, they bring out exotic dancers. It's like not fun. You can go back to your room, but like it's really not. And I found this very funny because he's talking about it as like, it's really not appealing, guys. You have to do all these annoying things. And they're like, damn, that sounds great. But I understand Jimmy's perspective, because that would be me on a work retreat. I'd be like, he gets like pranked. Like he opens an envelope and a bunch of powder comes out and he thinks it's anthrax, but it was actually like Fun Dip or something. I don't know. They're pulling his leg. They're pranking him. They're not nice to him in this office. Okay. But while he's in the mailroom, he notices some kind of letter and he sets it aside. We get more information on that later, but like there's a moment of like something, he noticed something, you know? In Vegas, Ava and Deborah have lunch, and Ava talks about how the network really liked the pilot. They basically had no notes except they wanted the women to smile more. And then Deborah asks if they have a pickup date, and Ava's like, I don't think it's going to be for like a few more months. And Deborah's like, that's good, because I want us to take that trip to Europe. You can't be a boss until you've tried real bread. And then Ava's like, are you okay? Because Deborah's acting a little bit like, and Deborah's like, there is something I wanted to talk to you about. That mask that I had removed, they didn't get it all, like it spread. And I feared the case. I really did. I was really afraid. I will say I didn't anticipate this being like, I thought, okay, I thought she was gonna die, but I thought she was gonna die of like the way the storyline ended up happening is not the way that I anticipated it happening, when I thought, oh my God, the mask, something's wrong. Which I will say, my sister was the one who pointed that out to me. I completely, like, she was like, I don't, so I'm going to give my sister credit for that one. It wasn't like fully my idea. But immediately Ava's like, okay, we can speak to like get treatment. We have to have a plan. And Deborah's like, I'm not doing treatment. I'm not doing that. And Ava's like, what do you mean? And basically she wants to go out on her own terms. She's done fighting. She wants to go out on top. She did everything she wanted to do. She broke a record. She wants to go on her own terms. And basically her plan is that after the Europe trip, she's going to take a train to, I don't remember where, to an assisted suicide place. And Ava is very understandably upset by this. And again, this is not like when I thought, okay, Deborah probably has cancer, like that, she's going to be more seriously ill than she said a few episodes earlier when she said she got a mask removed and she's fine. I didn't think the route was going to be, and she's decided to go to an assisted suicide place. I would not have guessed that. But Ava's like, I'm not going. Deborah, meanwhile, is like, you always joke about being suicidal. And I think this is somewhat of a generational thing. I mean, I think I could go on a very long rant about, not even rant, just a tangent about like the way that people casually talk about being suicidal and like what that maybe indicates, because I do think a lot of people say that and they genuinely do not mean it in any sense. But I think there's also like a subsect of people, and maybe this is me just projecting my own depression brain onto, like, maybe I'm wrong and this isn't how people who aren't depressed feel, but I feel like there is a different attitude that a lot of people my generation have, where it's like maybe you're not actively suicidal, but you don't really have much of a will to live and everything feels pointless. That like joking about dying doesn't feel as serious as like when like as the adult, like not we're adults, but like as older people receive it, you know? Like if I were to say that I wanted to kill myself to somebody older than me, I think they would think that it was more serious than if I said it to somebody my age. I mean, honestly, knowing my history, most people in my life would probably be like, I mean, you're okay. But I don't know if that made sense. And maybe I'm wrong. And I do fear that I'm not the correct person to analyze how serious people are when they say that they want to die and that they're suicidal, because I am very often serious when I say it. So like I'm not the best. I'm like, people say that, but they don't really mean it. Or like they don't actively want to die, but they just kind of don't want to be alive. And I'm like, I mean, you literally have clinical depression. Maybe you aren't the person who can assess if this is like a common thing. But I do just generally feel like there is more of a hopelessness with my generation. Like everything feels so daunting, and like the environment's falling apart, the economy's falling apart. You look at, if you're my age, the way the people at I'm 26, going to be 27 less than a month, less than 2 weeks actually. Anyways, but like I'm 26 years old, and if I look back at how a 26-year-old 20 years ago, like the financial status they could be in, and like all of these things, not even let's say 20 years ago, 50 years ago, like it it it, it does feel very daunting, and life feels very pointless. And I think also with the environment, you're just kind of like, well, especially with AI ramping everything up, it's like I already felt like we weren't going to have a safe environment, and now it's like ChatGPT uses however many gallons of water, and it's getting worse and worse. Don't worry, I'm going vegan. I'm trying to do my part. I say that I'm a vegetarian who's trying to eat as little animal products as possible. I'm not fully vegan yet, but I'm going as vegan as I like. I'm easing into it. I'm easing into it. I was thinking about this recently because I've been a vegetarian for a while now. But when I was thinking about like how long I've been a vegetarian, I'm like, I actually like eased into it really slowly. Like first I stopped eating like red meat, then I stopped eating chicken, and then I gave up fish. Like I was a pescatarian going into college, but then I went to college in rural Ohio, and I didn't really care to eat. Like it wasn't like there was no fish that I wanted to eat. Honestly, at my college dining hall, like I would mostly eat the vegetarian meals. So I was like, I don't care enough about being a pescatarian. Like what? I'm calling myself a pescatarian so I can eat sushi once when I go home. I don't care enough about it. So then I just gave up fish and I stopped being a pescatarian, and I was just committed to being vegetarian. So I haven't really, I guess I've been a vegetarian for like 9 years. Anyways, who cares? Who cares? I've just been thinking about this a lot lately because I'm trying to go on my vegan journey, and I've been thinking about like I actually stopped eating meat like very gradually. Anyways, so I'm trying to do that with animal products. What am I talking about? Oh, the environment. And okay, I remember, I followed the thought. So anyways, I understand even this is like a generational difference where Deborah's like, but I also think, and maybe this is just me, I feel like even if you're like for me, there's a different, I have empathy and compassion for people who are suicidal in whatever like way that manifests, but I think there's also just like a different perspective that some people who are like some people have, that I feel like I have, of like I am suicidal because my brain is like attacking me versus like you're dying of an illness. Like those are very different experiences, and I think I imagine loved ones react very similarly. I don't know. I've never been in the position where somebody in my life is like, I'm so ill that I like want to, like, I've never been in that position, so I don't know how I would receive it as a loved one. But I think it's like, I mean, I imagine it's somewhat similar where like if you're suicidal, your loved ones are like, let's get therapy, like let's fix the pain you're in so the solution isn't dying. But I think there's also just like I don't know. I understand Ava's reaction to this. I really do. I really do. And I also just think, I mean, I don't need to go on a rant about how I feel about assisted suicide. I really don't. But I do unfortunately have a lot I need to say about it. I just think, and this is the one mini little thing I will say about it, is I think sometimes, especially with the way it's expanding, I think sometimes instead of making life better, they just allow you to die. And I think the goal should be staying alive. That sounded so stupid, but I just think sometimes you just need life to be less painful instead of the solution being dying. I don't need to go on a whole suicide rant tangent thing. It's unfortunately just relevant to this episode. But anyways, Ava's upset. Ava's like, I'm not going to Europe. Okay, I'm not going to Europe. It's a literal suicide mission. I'm not going. She calls Jimmy and she's like, I want power of attorney. I want a tranquilizer gun. I can chloroform her and just have her wake up in the hospital. And Jimmy's like, we're not doing that. Like, we're not doing that. I think you should go with her. She wants you to go with her. And Ava's like, well, can you talk to her? And Jimmy's like, I already tried. She asked him to get her affairs in order. So she did. So he did. And he's like, I think you should go. And Ava's like, I don't think I can. Jimmy, then we see him alone at the office. Nobody's there because they're all at the retreat. So it's like completely empty. And he gets all the paperwork he needs and like a bunch of evidence that he needs. Oh my God. He gets all the evidence that he needs for what he confronts Michael later. I'll get to it. Sorry, my cat just threw me off just listening to this. My cat just like ran behind me and startled me. Sorry. Do you have something to say to the people? Okay. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. Ernesto. Okay, so at the airport, Ava shows up and she says to Deborah, she's like, I'm coming with you. Please don't kill yourself. Deborah says, I'm going to kill myself. And Ava's like, okay, well, I'm still coming with you. Anyways, they go on the plane. Once they get to Paris, they rent a car. And this was a very funny scene because Deborah's trying to teach Ava stick, but she's also speaking French. And she's like, why are you trying to teach me French while you're also teaching me car? It was so funny. I have to say, when I was watching the episode, I was just stressed out the whole time, not really enjoying myself. Like, rewatching the episode to take my notes, I had a lot more fun with the funny moments because the whole time I was like, this is miserable. Like, you know that meme that's like the food is so good, I don't care whose funeral I'm at. I had the opposite experience. I'm like, I don't care how yummy this food is. I don't want to be at this funeral. Like, why am I here? Like, not only is this show ending, now they're killing off Deborah too. Rue's about to die on Euphoria, okay? Anyways, they have real bread. They go on a little carousel. I love the Paris montage. I really did. I would take such gorgeous photos of Paris if I went. I mean, I've been to Paris one time and I did get gorgeous photos and they were on my like fuck ass Samsung phone. I'm like, if I had a good quality camera, I would be taking gorgeous photos of Paris, okay? Because I think I went the year before I got my good camera. I don't remember. I also went when I was on Accutane and I know that there's a lot of tips and tricks now for people to not like be like Accutane really dries you out. And I know there's like tips and tricks and people are like, use nipple cream because it's nipple cream is like safe for you to put on your lips because like, you know, it helps cracked nipples and babies can obviously like it's safe for babies. So it's safe for you to put on your lips and apparently it's very, very nourishing. I wasn't on Google like Accutane tips. So my face was just like it was a nightmare. I hated Accutane. I have beef with Accutane. I'm not a doctor nor am I a legislator, so I would never be like, I don't think people under 18 shouldn't be on Accutane, because I'm not up. That's not up to me. But I personally, if I had a kid, I don't think I would put them on Accutane before they turned 18. Like, once you're an adult, okay, make that decision, but it's a bit intensive a medication. I guess it really depends. I mean, I don't really want to have kids, so this isn't a bridge I'm ever going to have to cross. But I just, like, if my kid comes to me and they're like, I'm really certain that I want to do Accutane, I think it'd be one thing. I didn't want to go on Accutane, and my parents were like, Emmy, one day you'll really wish you didn't have acne. Okay, you're going on Accutane. And it was horrible. I hated Accutane so much, so much. I'd beat with Accutane. Anyways, speaking of being suicidal, that was the first time I experienced being suicidal was on Accutane. Okay. Now, I have a genetic predisposition to mental illness. So I do think I also had some trauma. So I do think that I would have experienced depression regardless. And I do think that I was, like, anxious and depressed in certain ways before Accutane. Like, I don't think all of my issues, were triggered by Accutane by any means. When I look back to, like, certain things that happened when I was younger, I'm like, okay, these things obviously are compounded to cause my, like, low self-esteem and a bad sense of self and, like, blah, 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 blah. Okay, it wasn't Accutane that caused me to have issues. Okay, that was life. But Accutane was, when I was on Accutane, that was the first time that I genuinely wanted to kill myself. So I do think that there's a connection to that. Anyways, I don't like Accutane. I don't know why I even brought it up. Oh, okay, because I was thinking of Paris. Anyways, Jimmy and Kayla, back in the United States of America, they crashed the retreat to confront Michael, Kayla's dad, about stealing from clients and the company. Basically, he was selling the likeness of deceased clients to AI companies, which obviously is stealing from the clients, because when an actor, like, when famous people pass away, it's like their estate signs on to this, their estate rejects this. It's like there's a team of people who, like, continues to make money from, like, there's a conglomerate that continues to make money after a performer passes away, because obviously, like, their works will continue to make money. So then, like, that goes to their loved ones, and their loved ones have control over their estate and, like, all of those things. Okay, so basically, he, against anybody's knowledge, was just selling their likeness and stealing a bunch of money from the clients, and also stealing the money for himself. And basically, they're like, we won't expose you if you give us the company. We want latitude. And he's like, you know what? Fuck, take the company. I don't care. This is a constricting business anyway. Have fun. And then Jimmy's like, well, you have 3 houses. And he's like, yeah, and you know how hard it is to keep up with them? And Jimmy's like, you can sell one. And he's like, enough of your socialist bullshit. And you know what? I really related to Jimmy. Because it's like, you don't need 3 houses. And isn't that just so true of how corporations work, where it's like, they always say they need to lay people off, and, like, they're not making ends meet, when, like, the people at the top are, like, billionaires and have so much money and are still getting a huge paycheck. But God forbid the people who are already struggling because the economy sucks and gas costs so much money and rent's going up, but their wages aren't going up. Like, those of us down here make ends meet, but you need to lay us off. Because I'm not speaking for me personally. I'm just saying this is true of corporations, okay? It's like, I don't know, companies like Disney are always like, we're not making enough money. When the CEO is still a billionaire, it's like, you are making enough money. Maybe you're making less money than you were before, whatever. I don't even know. But the point is, there's plenty of money. You just don't want to divide it evenly. Anyways, sick and twisted. But anyways, Michael is supposed to give a keynote speech, and he doesn't. So then they give the keynote speech. And basically they're like, we're taking over now. Some of the employees are not happy because they've been mean to Jimmy this whole time. They're not excited about that. They're like, I'm not going to do this if they're in charge. A bunch more people leave because Jimmy's like, we can't do sugarfish every day for lunch. Like, we don't have the money for that. But, like, we will be doing good work. And if you care about the work, then, like, stick around. A lot of people don't care about the work, but some people do. And whatever. Back in Paris, Ava and Deborah go antique shopping. there's a little moment where Ava asks how much something costs, and it costs a lot of money, and then Deborah's like, the first offer is never the final offer. Then they buy out the Louvre, and Ava calls the Mona Lisa mid. I'm like, okay, pop off. I have seen the Mona Lisa once. I mean, I will say, I very different experience because I didn't go to the Louvre, just me and one other person. It was packed. Okay, it was packed, and I was a kid. I mean, I wasn't a kid. I mean, I was a kid, but I wasn't like I I was about my height, so it wasn't like I was super short and I couldn't see, but I still felt like I couldn't see. Um, and it wasn't my favorite thing I saw at the Louvre, but I enjoyed the Louvre. I did. I think I would enjoy it now more, like more now. I honestly, I and no hate to museums because I think they're so beautiful and so important. But I think I just grew such a like not like I really wasn't interested in going to museums because I went to the same ones over and over and over again when I lived in the like I grew up in Maryland, and anytime I had family come from like out of the country for like when I was younger, like we would always go to the same museums, and I was like, I'm tired of these museums. Okay, I've seen the museums. And then they opened up a new museum, and I never got to go to that one, or not never got to go, but I just never went to it. The African American History Museum, I never went to that one. I really want to go to that museum in DC. I think I would enjoy them more now. The only one I really loved when I was younger was the Air and Space Museum in DC. That one was so fun. But I did like the Louvre, and museums in different places are more interesting than like me seeing the same one. But I just now think as an adult, I would enjoy a museum more than I did when I was younger. Um, but I did like the Louvre. I really did. Anyways, then when they're leaving the Louvre, Ava's like, we got to go back and nap. And Deborah's like, why are we napping? And she's like, because we're going clubbing today, and I'm going to pick out what you're wearing. Then the scene of them dancing at the club was so beautiful because like they're dancing and they're having a great time. And then you just see like Ava watching Deborah, and she has such a sad, profound look on her face, while Deborah's just like it's so powerful just in the visual medium of it. And that's another thing I think Hacks does really well, is that it shows instead of always telling you. Like it's just such a well done show. And I know I say things and I'm like, that's like bare minimum, but I feel like a lot of shows nowadays, it's like it really does feel like you're telling me instead of showing me. Like a lot of the critiques I have, like a lot of the compliments I have of Hacks is because I feel like not every show does this. So as much as it feels like bare minimum, it's so necessary. Anyways, the next like in it's kind of still the nighttime, but not really. Like they're watching the sunrise. Ava's smoking a cigarette, and then Deborah like goes to sleep. The next morning, Deborah comes down. Ava didn't sleep at all. She did a bunch of research. She has a bunch of stuff printed out, and she repeats what Deborah had said about the antique shopping, where she's like, I've done all this research about treatment, and Deborah's like, I'm not doing treatment, Ava. And Ava's like, your first offer is never the final offer. And she tries to sell her case. She makes a plea. Deborah is not budging at all. And Ava gets really upset. She gets angry. She gets emotional. And it's really, really powerful scene. It's really, really, like, it was so sad. Then Ava goes to a church and she lights a candle. And again, so visually beautiful, so powerful. Like that's just, and it's such a relatable feeling on some level or other, where it's like you still alive, but I'm barely breathing. Just pray to a God that I don't believe in. Like when you're so desperate, you turn to the things that of logical sound mind you don't believe in, and logically they don't make sense to you, but on a visceral emotional level you're so desperate that you're like, let me pray to God. Like it was so powerful. It was so powerful. Ava then meets up with Deborah, and she tells Deborah that she hates this, but she's going to support her. And then Deborah reveals to Ava that Ava's hands are actually smaller than Deborah's, because it was like an ongoing joke that like Ava had really big hands. And this was just like a fun moment of levity. And again, full circle, where it's like an ongoing bit that is like wrapped up really, really nicely. Back in the United States, Jimmy and Kayla settle in. He gets his old office, and then Kayla gets her dad's office. But once he's there, she doesn't want to be in the corner office. She's like, I think it's better if I can see you. So she ends up sitting where she used to sit when she was Jimmy's assistant. And then Randy, who is Jimmy's current assistant, gets the corner office, which Randy's super excited about. But this was the moment that I was referring to earlier that was very like full circle, connecting. They're in the same place, but it's different. Like Jimmy and Kayla's relationship is so different than it was in the first season, but they're in the same place with, like, I just think it's beautifully full circle. And I think it's also really powerful narratively to show characters in the same place having changed so much, because it's so clear in a simple way how much has changed without having to tell us, because they're in the exact same place, but there's such a clear difference. And that's so powerful of a tool of like showing us as the audience how much work you've put into these characters and how much growth has happened. I really love this. It was very beautiful. And I really love that. Bob Lipka then calls and he wants to work with them. Like, go fuck yourself, Bob Lipka. Go fuck yourself. Whatever. Then back in Paris, Ava asks Deborah what she'd ask God. And she says that one time she like called Burt Reynolds, and Burt Reynolds said he would call her back and he didn't, and she wants to know what that's about. Side note, I could not pick Burt Reynolds out of a lineup. I know nothing about Burt Reynolds except the fact that in Heart of Dixie there's an alligator named Burt Reynolds. And I really like that alligator, but like I don't know anything about Burt Reynolds in real life. Is he a singer? Is he an actor? I imagine he's an actor. The name gives actor more than it does. And I'm sorry if that's ludicrous, okay? I'm so sorry to Burt Reynolds and any of his stans. I only know the alligator. But then she says, and I wrote this down verbatim because I liked it. She said, I pretty much have everything else figured out. In fact, I think he or she, or, they, them, might have some questions for me, actually. I really like that. I really like that. I don't, like, it's not that, like, I don't know why that just spoke to me. Okay, that just spoke to me. And it reminded me of the Lisa Barlow from Real Housewives of Salt Lake City when she's like, I'm very important to God. I have no idea the context of that because I've seen like half a season of Salt Lake City and it was not that one. But I've seen that on TikTok and it cracks me up where she's like very emotional in one of her confessions and she's like, I'm very important to God. Like, I love that. Deborah Vance will keep. But even this small moment where she's like, they, them, and then they joke and because Ava's like, ooh, they, them. And then Deborah's like, I don't think a non-binary barista is meeting me in heaven. Okay. I just meant like an essence, a presence, like and then Ava's like, that sucks because I would love a matcha when I get there. And then they start joking about like dying. Deborah goes for another croissant and Ava's like, the best part about dying for somebody with disordered eating must be like eating another croissant, not even worrying about it. And then Deborah's like, actually, the best part is not saving receipts because you're never going to get audited again. They go back and forth, and then Ava steps away because she has to go to the bathroom before their train comes. And when Ava's gone, Deborah writes something down in her joke notebook. And this was just, again, such a powerful moment where like nothing was said, but in a quiet moment, she has a realization, she writes something down, and then like that shifts everything. Sorry, getting emotional just thinking about it. Okay. Ava comes back in a hurry. She grabs her things. She's like, we need to go to the trains. She runs ahead. Deborah chases after her, which again, very much mirroring the pilot episode where Ava stormed off and then Deborah chased after her. And Deborah chases Ava down and she's like, wait, the best part of dying is that I can't even enjoy being bone thin. That's the better joke. And Ava's like, okay, yeah, that is the better joke. Like, what is your point? And that was something that happened in the first episode where they were bantering and then Deborah chased her down to be like, blah, 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 this is the better joke. Again, they're in the same place, but very differently. in a really, really powerful way. Ava's like, okay, yeah, that's the better joke. Like, what are you saying? And then Deborah says, I may not have 30 years, but I think I have another hour. And I don't like, that's just so beautiful. That's so beautiful. And it's so true. It's so true. Like, you might not have 30 years. And I think it's also so powerful when this whole season has been building up to like Deborah's thinking about like her legacy. And when she was talking about being ready to go, she's like, I want to go out on top. Like, I broke records. I did everything I wanted to do. There's nothing left for me to do. And the thing that ultimately makes her decide that she wants to stay is a small moment. It's thinking of the better joke. And this even kind of ties back to the AI storyline where she got offended at the idea that she would need AI to help her write a joke because she's like, the process is what makes it, and it was just so beautiful and so powerful. And I think such a great message for a comedy too, where it's like, that's really what it's about, is just the little things, is thinking of a better joke. There's always going to be a better joke. There's always going to be a yummier bite of food you haven't tried. Like, life isn't about the big accomplishments. While those are great, it's about the better joke. It's about working on something creative and honing it. It's about laughter. It was just so beautiful. It was so beautiful. Ava and Deborah hug. Deborah's like, can you help me write it? They hug. And it's like such a beautiful visual. Jimmy and Ava talk on the phone. He's super relieved. And he says that she saved Deborah's life once. It's not surprising that she would do it again. And then the episode ends with Deborah and Ava like walking hand in hand, brainstorming jokes. And then they're walking in Paris hand in hand, brainstorming jokes. And then the Eiffel Tower changes to the one in Vegas, and they're walking down the street in Vegas inaudibly, but that's how it ends. And it was just so beautiful, and I'm really gonna miss Hacks. And I never talked about any of the other seasons on my podcast, so maybe it doesn't have to be over. Maybe I can go back and do episode like season by season deep dives or something. I don't know. It doesn't have to be over just because it's over. I don't know. I'm in denial. But that was just such a beautiful ending. And again, rewatching it, I was a lot less upset because when I was watching it the first time, I was like, I don't even like, Deborah's about to die. Why do I care? Other shows that I want to touch on very briefly because I have some time left. It has not quite yet been an hour. So let me talk about some other shows that I want to talk. I'm going to talk about Euphoria, and then I'll talk about my plans for the podcast and Love Island and everything. Okay, so Euphoria season 3, the final season. What the fuck was that? I feel like Euphoria is a perfect example of why creative processes it's so necessary to have like collaborators and people to like work with you. Not that people can't create beautiful art by themselves, but I think so much is honed and improved by having somebody to bounce ideas off of and like edit things and like multiple perspectives. Like, I feel like you can really tell that one individual person thought of Euphoria, like create like, and it's just because it's so uncohesive and like confusing. And there would be moments where like in the season, a storyline seemed interesting and then it went nowhere. Like, I was just frustrated by the fact that, like, for example, like Cassie and Maddie's storyline ended up just kind of becoming about Nate because Nate gets into financial trouble. So then Cassie needs to get Nate out of financial trouble to help Cassie because Cassie's in financial trouble because of Nate. Like, she's trying to save Nate. So then, and then like, sorry, I'm rambling. I just like I'm not making sense. I feel like there could have been some interesting ideas, but the execution was very, very confusing. It wasn't cohesive. It didn't like, I don't know. It was executed poorly. I also just think that like what got like screen time over other, like which characters got screen time over other characters. Very confusing, very frustrating. Even Nate's storyline, who like I hated Nate, like I feel like they did that character a disservice. Like, and not because I think he deserved like more. I just feel like as much as I hate him, I think he was an interesting character that they kind of flattened, and then like he did so many bad things in the first 2 seasons, and then the thing that ultimately gets him is that he owes money to some mobster because he's trying to get into real estate now. uh, that just doesn't hit the same. It's like, you know, and I think my biggest, not my biggest issue, but I was really like, interestingly enough, the entire episode of Hacks, I was so distraught over the idea of Deborah dying. And I didn't have that same feeling watching Euphoria. Like I felt like she was gonna die, Rue. And I wasn't like stressed about it happening because I felt like it was gonna happen. And the scene itself was actually quite beautiful. Like I think Rue's death sequence was my favorite part of Euphoria season 3. I just hate the way that it was done after. And again, this is something where I don't know if this is just me. I feel like they should have wrapped up the Maddie Cassie storyline before they had Rue die, because they had Rue die and then it was like we don't get like, we just jump straight to like Cassie and Maddie like designing a house, and like then we get information that Rue's been dead and they know that Rue's been dead, but it's like we don't find out immediately how they feel in the aftermath, and then they're just wrapping up their story. I didn't like the execution. I didn't like the execution. Okay, I didn't like it. I didn't take notes, and that's clear. But I just like, I don't know. I think Euphoria to me is really an embodiment of why it's important to have collaborators and feedback, and why that's so important in creativity, is like bouncing ideas off of people. And I think especially when, not that you have to have the lived experience of every character you write, because obviously you only have your own lived experience, and you can't, and if you're only writing from that one angle, then like you're not writing what the world actually is. And I think to be a good writer, you should write different like people who have lived very different lives than you, obviously. But I think when you're writing so many women, and a lot of the storylines are based on like sexual oppression or like women's sexuality, I really think you need some other voice in the room besides your own. Same with like racial issues. It's like if you're a white man writing these racial dynamics, it's very, very weird. I'm glad it's over, but I'm also like, it sucks that it had to end that way. You know? I don't know. Okay, so here's what I'm thinking for the podcast going forward. Basically, is I don't want to talk about Love Island like super in depth, and I don't have a show that I want to recap like week by week the way I was doing with Hacks or the way I was doing with The Pit. Like I don't have anything coming out right now that I really want to talk about. Like there's a new show on Hulu, Not Suitable for Work, which I have been watching, but I don't really care. Like the episodes aren't like, it's like a very, like I don't have anything that I really, really want to say about it. So I'm not going to recap that. And I also don't really want to recap Love Island. But I think what I'm going to do is, the birth of this podcast was just for me to talk about what I've been watching or rewatching. So I think I'm just going to watch TV as I normally would. And then if I have any thoughts about the Survivor season I'm watching or about a Love Island dynamic, I'll write it down in my notebook. And then once a week, I'll just share my thoughts, like my rapid fire thoughts on a variety of shows. That's going to be my plan. Once Big Brother starts, I will obviously be recapping Big Brother in a more structured way. But I think for now, I really don't have like one show that I want to recap. In the meantime, since I'm kind of going to be doing rambling stream of consciousness episodes, which require less preparation because I'm not going to be like rewatching things and taking scene by scene notes, I'm going to maybe in some of my free time work on some deep dives. I started a Yellow Jackets one like last year and I never finished it. And I really do want to do a Yellow Jackets season 3 deep dive because I did one for seasons 1 and 2. So like I need to do one for season 3. So I will get to that. And then maybe School Spirits, maybe Off Campus season 1. I don't know. I'm going to try to do some of that in my free time. But going forward, I'm just going to be talking about like once a week, I'm going to check in and I'm going to just ramble about my thoughts on what I've been watching. I do want to talk about Survivor a bit more. I'm almost done with Millennials versus Gen X. I don't know what I'm going to watch after, but I'm really, really enjoying Survivor. And like, I don't want this to just become a Survivor podcast, but I fear Survivor is the only thing that I really have a lot to say about right now. That's just my truth. That's just my reality. I have so much to say about Survivor, and not really anything else. Love Island. Let me share my brief thoughts on Love Island. I don't really care about anybody yet. Like, I just genuinely don't really care about anybody on Love Island yet. That's my truth. I just don't care about anybody on Love Island right now. I don't dislike anybody, but I don't really care about anybody. Like, I really liked Mel, but then she kind of bothered me. And I really liked Beatrice, but then she kind of bothered me. And then the men, I don't really have any feelings towards, negative or positive. Like, I'm indifferent to them. And here's the thing about Love Island is that I'm new to Love Island. Like, last season was the first season that I watched, and I haven't seen any of the UK versions. And so because of that, I'm just like less invested in the format of Love Island. So I don't get as hooked easily. Like, for me, I don't get invested in the game of it, in the format. Like, I'm not interested. So if I'm not invested in any of the people, I'm not particularly hooked. Like, Big Brother, even if I don't like any of the contestants, I like the structure of the game, so I'm interested. Even The Bachelor, because I have such a long history with The Bachelor, even if it's a horrible season of The Bachelor, I'm always locked in because I'm interested in who's going to get what rose and what's going to happen. Like, I like the format. Love Island, I don't quite feel anything for the format. Like, it's just not my cup of tea. And I'm not particularly invested in any one couple or person right now. But I don't know. I'll talk more about that next episode. I'm like genuinely going to be transparent. I'm anxious that my audio didn't work at all. So I'm just going to wrap up to triple check that my audio worked. But you'll hear from me next week. My goal is to have episodes out Wednesdays, Thursdays, maybe talking about Love Island, maybe not. I really don't know. If you have any recommendations for shows you want me to watch, please let me know in the comments down below. Yeah. Please let me know. Please let me know if you have a good show that you're like, Emmy, you've never talked about this show. Have you watched it? Maybe I haven't. Anyways, I'm going to wrap up. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the episode. I hope you have a great week. You'll hear from me next week. Bye.